Welcome. I'm John Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
WCAT Radio presents I Thought You'd Like to Know, a program that features some very interesting people who have a message for you. And today we're going to meet a very interesting man in Texas. His name is John Mahfood, and he happens to be the brother of the man who owns this radio station. And he's going to tell us about some interesting work and ministry that he has. So welcome, John Mahfood, to I Thought You'd Like to Know.
Thank you, Bob. Pleasure to be here.
So let's start in with your how you got started in this world. Like I imagine you were a cradle Catholic, right?
Oh yeah, I was baptized at a very young age in the Catholic Church. Went through the whole 9 yards. It instilled in me a cultural aspect, I suppose.
And you're a pretty strong Catholic right now, right?
Oh, I'm a typical Catholic. I go to Mass when I'm called, and I try to do best, but I'm pretty busy with my own ministry.
Yeah.
We have a lot of outreach, and we do a lot of good for our community.
Well, now, when you were baptized, was that in Texas then?
Yes, sir. It was in the...
Okay. It
was in the church right downtown, actually, the Immaculate Conception Cathedral.
And well, tell us about how it was growing up as a Catholic. You went to Catholic schools then?
Yes, sir. I went to Catholic schools for the first part of my life, and it was interesting. Taught me a lot of discipline. Taught me what to say and what not to say in the right places. And gave me a focus that I don't think I would have gotten from a regular private school. The focus on God in my life. And that was pretty important. I'm grateful to my parents for putting me through there. You hear Catholic school stories all the time that are horrible. No, man, mine was awesome.
What was there any particular person that really had an impression on you?
Well, it was Father Joseph and Father Petter, and he was a foreign guy. He played the guitar and the harmonica and kept me entertained. When it was time to go to Mass, I didn't get, angry and not want to go. I wanted to go hear the music, Father Petter was going to play the harmonica and the guitar. That may sound a little geeky, but then again, I was 7. It was the highlight of my day.
Beautiful. So, you went along then, what about high school? How were you there? You still had your faith?
Still had my faith, but I was in public school at the time, playing football, just being a kid. Graduated early, and did my best to get into the Army.
Oh, so you spent a lot of time in the Army then?
About 9.5 years between active duty and the reserve component, yes, sir.
And what war were you in then?
Oh, I was off and on in different little engagements here and there. It's not something I give a lot of credence to in my life.
Were you kind of between the Korean War and the Vietnam War?
No, sir, I was Cold War. I went in
Cold War.
86 and got out in 96.
Mm-hmm. What about your faith there?
It stayed pretty strong. You can't do anything without God, and trying to do things without faith is even worse. Sometimes God's busy, so it's your faith that keeps you moving till the next time, He can come to you when you got your hand raised.
So you never really faltered that much then, huh?
No, just with any faith, you have ups and downs, you have times of doubt, you have times of elation, and luckily for me, I've had more times of elation because I've come to recognize God, our Father, as more of a commanding officer whose orders are to be obeyed. And when you hear the 1,000 whispers, and that's how God communicates with me, is through 1,000 little whispers, and they are loud. If you ignore them, there's a consequence to pay. And I just prefer not to ignore him when he speaks to me.
Beautiful. Now, what was your main job in the Army?
I was an explosives ordnance disposal technician. Trust me, that's a job that comes with a lot of prayer.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Pretty dangerous, huh?
It was fairly dangerous. You know, it's everything is what you put in it and how close you keep God to you. They say there's no atheist in foxholes. Well, there's not.
You left the Army then. You had enlisted, right?
Yes, sir. I had enlisted, and I had started tattooing while I was in the military as a part-time job. My friends would go out and drink a lot and run the streets with women and everything, and you know, I'm a straight guy. I have no problem with that. It's just I knew God had a different plan for me, and I would go off post and earn extra money in the tattoo shops. And once my talent got down, God kind of took over. I mean, when you give it to him, you can't really take it back.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight is your ministry. We'll touch on some of the other things that you do in the church too, but you have a business right now. What do you call it? The Ink Ministry called Resurrection Inc.
Yes, sir.
And you started that about what? You told me 25 years ago.
No, sir. June 6th will be my 10th anniversary here. And
okay.
It started out kind of odd. I was tattooing for a bunch of people I really didn't want to work for. They had a lot of drugs in their world, and it got kind of hairy. So I left the business, said, you know, this is not good for me. I don't want any part of this with any of these guys. I just wish there was a place where I could go and be me and tattoo and do God's work. And, man, I looked and looked for months to find a place that was acceptable, that fit my standards, that I could work in, and I couldn't. So I got a job painting with a local company here, and I was the only one that had any experience in swinging harnesses. So they put me up on the steeple to paint and glaze windows, and I tell you, it changes your perspective when you're 90 feet above concrete steps and Presbyterians.
Really?
So I was saying a prayer to myself, you know, God, I really don't think I can do this too many more years. I really want to go into tattooing. What can I do? And for the next 3 days, I got 1,000 whispers of open a shop for yourself. Do things my way. Do this the way that I have laid out for you. And it got to a frustration point. And I was up on top of this steeple on my lunch break. And, you know, I just prayed, God, I know you want me to do this. How do I pull this off? Another day later, I got a phone call from my current business partner. She explained to me that she had had a dream, and in this dream she was told to loan me over $30,000 on a handshake to do this. And within 2 weeks, Resurrection Inc. was a building. 4 months later, it was open for business. And, brother, we've been going strong ever since. You know, we're What, sir?
How did you get into this tattooing anyway? You said you started it when you were in the Army?
Well, I started it a little before the Army, but the Army was during the time that, you know, I actually sought, you know, to do it as a profession. As artists, tattoo artists, we all start out on the slower of our friends in a garage. And, well, I was good at it. So, you know, why waste the talent God gave you? If you bury it, it goes nowhere.
Well, who introduced you to that?
It was more or less a self thing. You know, I was a young man looking for my niche in the world, and, brother, I couldn't fix a 350 Chevy short block, but I could draw you an awesome picture of 3 guys repairing one. And, you know, one thing led to another. It just kind of morphed into this. Because there's no money for drawing on paper.
So you were a good artist, Then how did you learn how to tattoo?
Oh, by watching others do it. I got a few myself, and I just gravitated to it. You know, like a duck goes to water. You know your natural environment when you see it.
So, like you said, you did some of it when you were in the Army on your free time, huh?
Yes, sir. Part-time, outside of whichever gate was closest that had a tattoo shop that was willing to let me work. Some places I'd get to, and some places I didn't.
Then after you got out of the Army, you had this you didn't have a tattoo job. You hadn't gotten really into that again. And you were telling me about how you were saying you were on that steeple when God told you to start your own shop and start doing what you were good at doing, right?
Well, I had worked in other tattoo shops off and on for the past 26 years.
Even after the Army?
Yes, sir. After the Army,
okay.
The Army, you know, it's been a constant with me. A lot like going to Mass. I mean, it's a constant for most.
Yeah.
So tattooing was a lot like that for me, but I think it was the power of creation that led me to it. And Resurrection is a place of a different type. All these other tattoo shops out there that I've come across, and there's only one local that is another type of ink ministry as well. But all these other shops, man, they work for the other guy. I mean, you go to their place, you see bongs and pipes all in the front counter, really weird, whacked out people, strange lightings, horrible music, and some of the darkest artwork on the planet in most of these shops. And, you know, tattoos are fashionable. They're not wrong to have. It shouldn't be demonized. And most of the industry uses it to demonize. Well, God has very few men in his corner, or women in his corner for that matter, in this industry, willing to take up for him. You know, to push creation as a point of artwork instead of that big swastika somebody got on their backside 10 years ago. Let's take that so that the undertaker, even if it's the only person that ever sees it, doesn't see a swastika. They see a nice flower with a verse underneath it, or a butterfly with a 2 Corinthians reference. You know, anything to push the message forward. It's 1,000 baby steps. So if it takes 1,000 baby steps to save a soul, and my step is number 168 because they saw a tattoo I did, then I've been able to forward my ministry and work through God's methods that way. I found it an indirect.
Do you know other tattoo artists that feel the same way you do?
I know one. He has another shop here in town, and you know, we're far enough away. We're not even competition. We're probably the only two shops that'll sit down and have coffee together. But his name, his place is named Redeeming Inc.
Now, give me some examples of your work and how it progressed from when you started.
Well, when I started, I was doing the things that, you know, everybody else was doing. You know, little tattoos on the general public, names, stuff like that. And with any art form, even, you know, whether you're drawing on people or paper or painting or it's music, you always start out with kind of a slow beginning. I mean, Elvis Presley fought hard to get into a recording studio when he was starting out. And for tattoo artists, it's the same way. Most of the people in the industry are not Christian, much less Catholic, and have ulterior motives for their participation in the industry. And it's almost always related to a habit or something. So when John Q. Public comes out and wants a tattoo because it's mainstream, where are they going to go? Are they going to have to go and be subjected to a bad message? Or are they going to come someplace like here and sit down and we work with you to help forward the message you're trying to get across with a permanent marking. I mean, how do you want to be perceived?
It would seem that that you get some people to come into your shop that wanted the dark side tattoos. What do you do then?
Sometimes we do, but they usually don't stay. Much like us as Christians can walk into a place and feel, okay, this place is of the enemy and I want nothing to do with it. A lot of the ones that come in that want the doom and gloom and the death and destruction walk in and look around and don't really feel comfortable here, so they leave. We don't drive them away. Just when the Spirit of God is in a building, it's there. And all those that are evil or spawn of evil will run and hide from the light that shines. So most of the time we don't have business like that. We have, like I said, some people turn around, look around, say this place ain't for me, and walk out.
Well, you have examples of your work in the store, right?
I have a few. A lot of my tattoos, I specialize in the cover-up. I help take things from a life before Christ and help make it into something conducive for their life with Christ now.
So you have a lot of rebirths, then, so to speak, or people that have changed their lives.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a lot easier to change in your life when you look in the mirror and you don't see that big skull on your chest. You see a big flower you see a big cross surrounded by dogwood blossoms. Completely changes the way you program your mind every day.
Do people have suggestions for you?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And most of the What, sir?
What are some of you were going to say most of the time what?
Well, as we're talking, I'm thinking about a youth minister that came to see me about 9.5 years ago. And back in the 70s, he was a disco daddy. I don't know if you remember the type, the gold chains and platform shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Big puffy hair, whole 9 yards. Well, he had a pot leaf put on his arm back in his wild days. And now he's a youth minister. And he couldn't even take his shirt off at a church picnic, out at the lake with the kids. So he came to see me, and we covered up this rather horrible-looking hand-picked marijuana leaf with a picture of Jesus Christ stuck in a gut roll laugh. And now when people say, they don't say, hey, why do you have a pot leaf on your arm? They say, why is Jesus laughing? And it gives him an opportunity to minister a little bit, too, because Jesus laughs at us when we do stupid things, just like we laugh at our own children sometimes. I mean, yeah, we're concerned with their welfare, but when they walk into a glass door 2 or 3 times and aren't really hurt, they're just kind of shocked. It's a little funny. That's kind of how he felt about his tattoo. It slowed him down. He learned a lesson, and now he gets to tell all the kids, that Jesus isn't all about thorns and nails. Jesus is your personal Savior that will go with you and cry with you and laugh with you and pick you up when you're down. And that's the message his tattoo puts out now.
So that's why you call it Resurrection Inc.
Well, I call it Resurrection Inc. for several reasons. I mean, body piercing ultimately saved our souls. It's about the resurrection of my career. It's about the resurrection of other people's faith. When they come in and they see this big tattoo guy that is just, a humble servant of God, not the big, burly, bruiser type that you'd see somewhere. I'm big and burly. Some people call me a bruiser, but I'm all about God. I'm not the guy to look for in a dark alley.
What are some of your most beautiful creations?
Well, they're all inspired. They're all inspired by what I see and what I read and what I dream. And some of my most beautiful work is of a Skull Mount, where Christ was crucified. The sun sets and the clouds, the angry skies. I've done 1,000 versions of that piece, and it never gets old. I have another nice piece I like to do. It uses the hand of the individual as Christ's hand, and you're looking down the wing of the cross from his hand, which is also the person's hand. And that's a pretty moving piece that I like to do. But anything with color that illustrates creation and peace, brother, I'm all about. We don't have enough of it in this world. You're not going to see it on a billboard driving down the street. It's kind of nice to see it on the back of somebody's arm at Walmart.
You were telling me before we went on the air that tattooing goes way back, huh?
Yes, sir. It's past recorded history. There's a joke in the industry about how Ugg and Thug were sitting around a campfire, and Ugg picked up a stick and poked Thug, and then there was a black mark, and it just went from there. But that's about how far it goes back. I mean, and it's been done for, a myriad of reasons over the eons.
You said that the Queen of England had one?
Yes, sir. That would be Prince Albert's wife. She had a small black heart tattoo on her left breast. And, well, we all know the piercing that Prince Albert was famous for. So they were a tattooed and pierced monarchy.
Huh.
But it was very dangerous back then to have anything done. And there was no real sanitary way of doing it. So they literally took their life in their own hands for their body mods.
Oh, so they were actually in the business, St. Albert, huh?
What, sir?
You said St. Albert actually had the tattoo business?
No, sir, not at all.
Prince Albert, okay.
He had a special piercing designed to help him from keeping an embarrassing matter from arising in his wife's court while wearing tights.
Okay.
She had a small tattoo on her left breast that was a heart.
Yeah. And you said that he actually took his life in his own hands?
Well, they all do. Everybody does that gets a tattoo that doesn't go to a licensed facility with modern antiseptics and so on.
Oh, yeah, because of the because of not having sanitary conditions.
Right. Well, their chief water source at the time was the Thames River. How sanitary was that in medieval England?
Yeah.
Or even Victorian England. I mean, it wasn't very pretty. So, until modern sanitation developed, every time somebody got a tattoo, it was a risk to their life. Some of the pigments were poison.
So tattoos are not always on the dark side, huh?
No, sir, they weren't always on the dark side. Just like anything that man comes up with, the devil finds a way to mutate it and make it serve his own interest. So wine, for instance, Christ's first miracle, turned water into wine to honor his mother.
Yep.
Well, now, you look at the wine industry and the alcohol industry, and it's more bad than it is good.
Mm-hmm.
Tattooing went through something very similar. It was a dark, shadowy place, but instead of starting out in the light and it going to the dark, I think it kind of started out in the dark and is moving to the light as more and more people are educated on, how it's phrased in the Bible and how it works and the way society is. So you can have 1,000 people running around preaching the dark side and never say a word just by showing their artwork. Now you can have 1,000 people walking around to counterbalance that, showing nothing but the good side and creation and glorifying God with their body art.
Really?
It's all a battle.
Ran into a fellow not too long ago that had a swastika on his forehead. And he wanted to change his life. And I haven't seen him since he had the tattoo done, but what they did is they made it a neutral color, so it just erased the swastika.
Sometimes that's effective. Sometimes laser surgery is required.
Oh, yeah?
The fact that a swastika tattooed on his forehead disappeared is proof to me God is working in my industry.
Right.
I mean, that's one.
Now, when you started tattooing, you didn't you'd have this Christian motive in mind at all, huh?
No, sir. When I started it, like I said, I was a younger man, and I didn't want to go on the hunt and prowl throughout town. I wanted to stay out of trouble. So I found a place to go. And like anything, God has funny ways of luring you in. I was initially lured in as a young man by basically wine, women, and song, and as soon as I got there and my attention was grasped, it changed. Because once you're saved and you give it over to God, whether you fight it or argue it or not, you're still saved, and God is going to latch onto you and make you follow the program one way or another. So the opportunities that were presented to me early on started out from a party aspect, but rather rapidly switched to working for God.
Yeah, and when you were up on that steeple, God was whispering to you, and so when this lady made it possible to open that business, you started then as a Christian, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is a culmination of all my experience up to this point in life. At the time I opened this, I'd been tattooing around 16 years, and this was it. As a father and a Christian, there was no way I could work in these studios in good conscience with the people that run them. In most cases, I didn't want my kid to come up and bring me a ham sandwich and see the owner doing drugs in the back room. So I was done. I was done. I had turned my back on tattooing. I had gone into construction, and I was turning my back on it, and God just would not let me put that down.
So you gave up on it for a while?
I gave up on it for about 6 months. And then it was just made clear to me, like I said, 1,000 whispers are louder than a bullhorn sometimes. It took a little while, but I got the message, and I've been following his program ever since, wholeheartedly.
Now,
business.
Where was your business in Texas?
I am in Tyler, Texas, on the border of Tyler, Texas, and Bullard, Texas.
Now, is that where your dad was in radio?
Yes, sir. He was in radio down here. I had owned several other shops around the state, and my father called me one night, told me he was passing on, and he needed me to come home and take care of him. So I sold my shop and came home to take care of him, and started out from ground zero after the funeral.
Were those Christian shops that you had too?
No, they weren't Christian shops. They were just well-behaved shops.
Okay.
I didn't sell any type of paraphernalia or anything like that. I was all about just the work, but I did all kinds of work. Not just Christian-oriented work. But the fact that those places are no longer open, and God and life pulled me away from those to redirect me in the direction that I'm in now, is a miracle. Here.
And that's when you opened the place in Tyler.
What, sir?
And that's when you opened the place in Tyler.
I opened the place in Tyler as soon as I could scratch back up to eye level and start looking around. There wasn't any place really for me to work, and I tried to work for a couple of places. It just didn't happen. I was too goody two-shoes, as it was put to me in one place. I'm too honest to be in this industry. So, I'd been done with it. So I went back into construction, and, that was it. And I had no intention on going back into tattooing. But like I said, man, God gets a hold of you, and He doesn't let you. He's going to do what He wants you to do one way or another. You can kick and scream, or you can hop on the bus and go for a nice ride.
You haven't opened any other shops then this time?
No, sir, just this one. It takes all of my attention to operate, maintain, and keep all of my people on message. It really takes more than you'd think.
It's a tough job, huh?
It can be. I mean, I'm in a leadership position, but, not just of my company, but everybody that's employed by my company, looks to me for leadership. So the more I've tried to say, God, I'm not really ready, the more He's piled it on and said, oh, yes, you are. Here, the easiest way to get out of your problems is to help these 5 people deal with their problems, and they're worse than your problems, so good luck, buddy. Call me if you need help.
That's good. So, but you were telling me when I set this up a few weeks ago, this interview, you were saying you moved to the small town, though.
Yes, sir. I moved from all the big cities and all the big engagements back to the town I'm from, which is Tyler, Texas. It's a small town.
Oh, okay. So you did start your shop though in Tyler. Well, yeah. You were living in some larger towns.
Oh, I've lived all over the country. I followed the industry wherever I could be, and some places I've worked in a location 2 weeks, sometimes 6 months. I did this across Europe when I was in the military, and I just kind of gravitated back to it. But Resurrection Inc. is so far the apex. I have no idea what God's got in store for me now. I'd love to have a chain of these if I could find other people like me that are willing to keep the message online.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, being that we're on the radio, tell us a little bit about your dad and his radio work down there in Tyler.
My father, a lot of people saw him as a tyrant in life, but, he was my dad. That's the man that took me fishing and took me to Dairy Queen, and, regardless of the fact I had to put the worms on the hook for him. That was another story. But he had done many things and finally settled into a ministry of sorts with the prison system toward the end of his life, and started a radio talk show. And he was known as Philip Rassick. Kind of a Rush Limbaugh kind of guy, but more down to earth and less on a wing. And if you listen to the recordings, you can actually follow a progression from, kind of apathetic, more toward Christian toward the end of his radio broadcasts. This was an example that I followed because, I listened to my dad's broadcasts. So I guess you could say he's part of the reason that, I didn't turn out to be a sour apple.
So he was on every day like Rush Limbaugh?
Just about, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. But he was a strong Christian. He was a strong Christian?
He was later in life, and he was younger in life. But like everybody, you go through a spell or two. And the fact that he was there, then went away, and then came back, as far as God goes, that really, led me back to where I need to be. Because if my father could be who he was and still fall to his knees at the end of the day and pray, who was I to question him or his methods?
Yeah.
It was just my job to follow his example.
So I think Sebastian is going to archive all those programs that you sent him, and it's going to be on every week on Tuesday nights, I think at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, which you're on what, Mountain Time?
No, sir.
Specific time.
Central Daylight Savings. Or Central.
Oh, so you're Central Time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that'd be an hour earlier then. So how about some more examples of, you talked about that youth minister that you changed that marijuana leaf to, you said it was became a cross then?
No, sir.
Oh no, laughing Jesus.
He's got one leg up, both hands on his stomach, big smile on his face. He's got his head thrown back, and he is just laughing his sandals off. And that's how I see God looking at us a lot of times. Like we look at our children slamming into that patio door. So, are you all right, buddy? Well, that's kind of funny. Don't do it again. And I see people doing this all the time. And the patio glass door that I refer to is kind of a metaphor. It's the things we do to ourselves. You know, we're not paying attention to what we're doing in life, and bam, suddenly we hit a brick wall or a glass door because we just didn't see it. Tattoos are a lot of the same thing. I've covered up some really unique phrasing, and I'll leave it at that. Gentleman got in front.
Yeah.
Covered it up with a scene of angels in the pew. It's kind of an empty cathedral, and there's not even a shape there. There's just a crucifix behind the podium. And the front row has ghostly images of angels on their knees in front of it. So there's no humans in the picture, but it kind of went along with what he had tattooed on him. I just flipped it around and made it work for the side of good instead of the side of evil. The little things like swastikas or lightning bolts, you know, sooner or later people see the error of their ways and they don't want to propagate hate anymore. Well, just because you decide to change your life doesn't mean that the signs that you have on you are advertising for your change in life. So if you go from, say, this just absolute waste of an individual, I couldn't think of a better term, but I mean, you're addicted to drugs, you beat your kids, you just got out of the jail, you're not interested in church, you don't care about God, but you've got to get this thing off of you because it's starting fights down at the local bar, it's starting fights at Walmart, people are seeing this thing, and that's not who you are anymore. Well, in order to change the inside, you have to change the outside, because once you change the inside and you don't change the outside, you still have the same thing going on. So to cover this thing up, like I said, it was quite a colorful phrase. Now when people see it, they see these angels praying, and the word is hidden behind the pew shadow. So you don't see it, but now you see angels praying in a church, and he gets a completely different reaction, which also makes his transition from just an absolute waste to a positive member of society and a member of God's army.
How many people would you say you do tattoos on each day?
It varies from 5 to 20. Just depends on the size of the piece and what I'm doing. I'm also a micropigmentologist, which is micropigmentologist is a little more than a tattoo artist. I work with plastic surgeons, help mastectomy patients and burn victims. I match their skin tone so you don't see the discolorations anymore, things like that. Just about anything doctor cuts and sews into place, he has to have somebody to do the paint job. So just like on a car, if you cut off an old fender and put on a new one, somebody's got to paint that sucker to match, and that's pretty much what I do.
Wow. So how did you get into that?
just a natural evolution of the tattoo business. And, you know, when God's got his hand on you, he says, you know, you could color that skin red or blue or green, or, hey, you can put it back like I made it for me. Will you do that? And I actually spend a lot of time doing that, putting it back like he had it the first time. But it's usually due to a surgery or a catastrophic injury. Like a little African-American girl got a grease burn on her nose. So, you know, when it healed back, it was a Caucasian color. It wasn't, you know, the cafe brown that she was born with. You can imagine the jokes and the trouble from that among other students in school. So her parents got a court order, and her doctor and her nurse came down, and they put the child to sleep, and I covered the white spot on her nose. Now you can't tell anything was ever different about the kid. I've done work on cleft palates. You know, Doctors Without Borders will go somewhere and fix a cleft palate for a kid, but they don't paint him to match. So I'll hide the surgical scars and mix up a batch of the young person's skin tone and hide it.
That's quite a ministry there.
Well, it has 1,000 different ways, man. I wish they could all come to mind right now so I could put them out there so everybody could hear. But there is 1,000 different ways God uses a tattoo artist when you're on his side. Wow.
And you say you have another fellow that is very similar in Tyler.
Yes, sir. He owns Redeeming Inc., and they are more Protestant-based.
Okay.
I opened up here in town first, and you'd figure I'd get upset that here comes a copycat, you know, trying to sneak into my niche. But not at all, man. Not at all. If God wanted me to be the only person in this market, he would not have put me out in the front for people to look at. So I'm glad that another tattoo artist and another shop owner has picked up on this and decided that this is the route to go with. And now there's two of us and not one of us. So we don't look at each other as competition. You know, we look at each other like two officers in God's army. You know, let's have coffee. What can we do? Who can we help this week?
That's right. So he's had some success too, huh?
Yes, sir. But I am usually very busy with my own business, and we don't get a chance to socialize as much. But we do send people back and forth for various needs that one place doesn't fulfill. Oh, yeah, we send people back and forth. Good. He does a lot of initial and new work, kind of like a carpenter would do new construction. And I do a lot of cover-ups and revamping. I will repurpose a tattoo. So we're specialists in our individual fields. We just work for the same side, so why fight?
So you said you have a great church there in Tyler too, huh?
Oh, we have a bunch of them. I mean, we have a good line of Catholic churches here, from the cathedral to St. Mary Magdalene's Church. That's the one I prefer to go to sometimes. All the way around to our Protestant churches here that are just on point with their message. I mean, we're a rhinestone in the Bible Belt down here.
Wow.
So I figured it was a great place to be, especially with my ink ministry. And, man, if I can get accepted down here in the Bible Belt and be a success and be respected among other churches and my peers, there is nothing to say that somebody out in California, Washington State, New York, or Missouri couldn't do the same thing that I'm doing right now. Change your life, give it over to God, and see where he puts it, especially as a tattoo artist.
Yeah, that's very unusual.
It's just an amazing thing. And we all wonder sometimes how God works, what he does. And, brother, sometimes the way he works comes out of left field and just smacks you in the side of the head, and you go, wait a minute, I never saw that coming. And usually the reply is, yeah, I know. Enjoy it.
So what you said you have other ministries in your church?
Could you repeat that, sir? I'm sorry. Cell phone.
I said you were telling me. I think you were telling me the either when we set this up or before we went on the air that you have time for other ministries in your church too.
Yes, sir. I work with several churches in the area, and it's all ink-based.
Oh, okay.
If a pastor or a priest has a young person in their church that's really and honestly trying to change their life, but they cannot afford $800 to $1,000 to cover up a bad tattoo, a lot of times if they come out here, sit down and talk with me, we'll do that work pro bono.
Beautiful.
The soul is more important than the dollar. You save the soul, the dollars come. God doesn't want you to stop, so He's got to keep you going somehow.
Do you? Does anybody? You have to go to any place and gives talks on this?
No, sir, not that often. I'm pretty much a pioneer in the ink ministry aspect of this, so it's a pretty new thing. I've been interviewed on TV, and this is my first radio interview of this kind, so forgive me if I seem a little nervous.
No, you're doing good.
But
go ahead.
I mainly sit out here and work. About 70 hours a week I'm working on people. And, of course, we go under constant attack. Spiritual is how it usually kicks off, and then, of course, humans get involved. But when you are brand new and wearing God's shiny armor on a hill, all the villagers that don't appreciate the glare are going to try to come by and throw mud at you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just a fight sometimes. Just keep the armor shiny.
What's the big problem? How do they attack you?
Oh, well, it's anytime you have somebody that you can't really outwardly attack, you'll slander, talk stuff about. But upon further investigation by a lot of our customers, this stuff is completely unwarranted, unfounded, and is an outright lie.
Yeah.
So when you're under a spiritual attack, the dark side will use lies, innuendos, false messages, and anything they can to try to discredit you because they know they can't win. So they want you to suffer with them. And the only thing you can do above any of that and just keep your head down and do what God wants you to do. So I spend a lot of time working.
Yeah. Now, you have other tattoo shops in Tyler, too?
No, sir. This is the only one. I could not...
No, not you. I mean, are there other dark side tattoo shops in Tyler?
Yes, sir. There's about 12.
So, do they give you any trouble?
They did, but over the years, they've come to understand that it's just beating their head against the wall. I'm not going anywhere. And so anything they say or do can't run me out of business or intimidate me. Every once in a while, we get a little flack. Somebody from another shop will call and book our entire day, and we think it's a customer, but they don't understand that there's 10 people waiting to get in the door for that one person not to show up, so it doesn't really hurt us. I mean, at this point in my career and with my ink ministry and my studio, the way things are going, I wouldn't say I'm bulletproof or fireproof, but I would say I'm definitely a little fire retarded. Well, that came out kind of wrong, but at the same time, it is a double pun. It's kind of funny.
Really? So this is the best thing you ever did?
Aside from being a father, I would have to say so. It's one of the most positive things I've ever done.
How many children do you have?
I have 5 sons.
5 sons. I have 5 daughters.
Oh, wow. I understand your headache, sir.
I don't know.
My oldest
it's
is 30
tough
and
for...
my youngest is 3, so I have them kind of spread out.
Yeah, that's good. So, what's the future look like?
Well, that's interesting. I see a lot of things coming, but just like tomorrow, you won't know what it holds until the sun comes up on it.
Mm-hmm.
So today is pretty great. I don't see tomorrow getting worse, but I take the cornucopia of God's blessings for what they are. So I don't see my business turning any other direction except for brighter than it already is. It just gets better and better. I mean, you put God in front of it, how bad can it be?
Did you say you had other tattoo artists that work for you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Have any of them ever thought about going out on their own?
Oh, they have, but the type of place I run is the kind of place that people strive to get to. So when I get a good tattoo artist, they don't want to go anywhere.
Okay.
This isn't a 6-bay skin mill where you walk in the door and the music makes you want to scratch your eyes out and there's 6 guys all scrambling to get to you. We run more like a private practice. It's more like coming to see a counselor for a lot of people. They'll come in, sit down, they'll just tell us their problems as we work on them. And we'll give them good advice when we can. And if it's a little more than we can handle, we'll try to make sure that they get in touch with the proper clergyman that can help out.
So how do you recruit?
I pray. Honestly, I pray for the right people, and so far I've gotten them. I have somebody in that other office will come and go within the 2 to 5 year span. Sometimes they grow, sometimes they refuse to grow, and God removes them from my world and sends somebody in even stronger. And right now we are at the strongest we have been in 8 years.
Beautiful.
We have a good team, and everybody's like family, and we treat everybody that comes in like family. And it amazes me, brother. I'll have people get on an airplane and fly to Tyler, Texas to get us to work on them. And it amazes the snot out of me because I'm just this kid from East Texas.
So Sebastian grew up there too in Tyler?
Yes, he did.
Wow.
At his point in life, I think he joined the Peace Corps where I joined the Army. So we
okay.
paths.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow we ultimately ended up in the same yard.
And he's been very successful in his work, too.
Yes, he has. I've really been impressed with my brother. His work with the seminary and the clergy is just unbelievably outstanding.
I know. Any other thoughts today?
Well, I have lots of thoughts, Bob.
Okay.
But I suppose the best thing I could do is to offer anybody any advice, whether it's a nose piercing, an ear piercing, or a tattoo. If you're thinking about getting it, don't listen to others. Pick up the book. Read it yourself. A lot of people will quote Leviticus 19 through 28 in the Bible where it says you won't get tattooed, branded, or mark the body in. But it also says in honor of the dead, and you'll wear your yarmulke, and you'll go to temple. So unless you're Jewish or Muslim, the Old Testament really doesn't apply to us because we were saved under the New Covenant. That's why God died. I mean, that's why Jesus died. God didn't die, but that's why Jesus gave up his life, was so that we could live under the New Covenant. So anybody that is passing judgment on someone and citing the Old Testament as a reason not to get a body modification needs to pray a little and read that book just a little bit better.
So, like you said, you have good cooperation from your priest?
Yes, sir.
And other priests in the area?
Tim Kelly is probably one of my favorite priests in the area. He's an Irishman. He came out and was impressed with what we were doing in the shop to a degree that he blessed the shop for me and told me it was probably the only tattoo shop that's been blessed by any diocese in the U.S. So
amazing.
That popped a lot of work for me, and you know he comes around, tries to get me to go in, but when it's time for me to go in, brother, I'm up to my armpits in my own trenches and trying to get people where they need to be.
Well, now we have this beautiful story to put on archive. Sebastian will archive it so that anybody that is interested in your work and interested in this type of thing, this is a good example that they can listen to and learn and maybe follow up by going to you and find out how they can get started into something like this.
Definitely. And what I've learned from doing this is it doesn't matter if you own a tattoo shop, a cathedral, or a lemonade stand. Once you give it to God, He keeps you in the fold, and you either evolve in your Christianity and take everything with you with it, or you don't have much of a life.
Well, John Mahfood in Tyler, Texas, we thank you very much for sharing this very interesting vocation and ministry. I mentioned when we started that the name of the program was I Thought You'd Like to Know, and we bring very interesting people in, and you're certainly one of the most interesting we've had in a long time. So thank you very much for being with us, and we'll be back next week, same time, same station. In the meantime, may God bless each and every one of you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Have a great time, sir. And if you need me again,
all right,
I'm right here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.